dead girl walking. Nobody knows that I've been bit. Nobody can know. They'll kill me, and I wouldn't blame them. I wouldn't feel betrayed if my own sister put a gun to my head and pulled the trigger if she found out. I would do the same, because it is the right thing to do, the safe thing to do. So I'm biding my time. It may be selfish what I'm doing, but in this apocalyptic world, it's every man for himself, or every woman, in my case. Hurry up, Nevada. Tristan wants those potatoes by yesterday. We're having a feast. I snap out of my thoughts and go back to peeling the last potato. I'm basically done. Here, take them. She picks up the metal bowl and walks out of the house. All the makeshift houses were built in a big circle after the apocalypse, so we're all like one big family. Our house isn't much. A run-down cabin, really, in the middle of a field that's in the center of the great woods. That's where I was bit. It was my fault, but I just couldn't help myself. Thomas. The very thought of him makes my eyes tear up and makes me reach for my locket. A picture of the two of us on our 2-year anniversary inside. He was one of the first to turn. I visited him often, but I never crossed the electric fence. I sang to him. I talked to him, sure that he was listening. Until one day, I couldn't help myself. 3 days ago, I turned the fence off for a split second in the middle of the night, and I climbed over. "I've missed you," I had told him, and he looked at me with pure love until he grabbed me by my wrist and then my waist. "Thomas!" I screamed, but he never responded. He threw me to the ground, and I realized that he wasn't looking at me with love. He looked at me with hunger, with fury, and he bit me. I screamed and screamed until he let me go, but not before tearing a piece of my midsection out. He felt pity, and he ran. I crawled back through the fence, and I turned it back on. I couldn't get help, so I stitched it up myself. I wrapped it in bandages and threw the bloody shirt far over the fence. I brush my fingers past the stitches as I remember. I wince at the pain. My plan is to wait until the last moment. Then, in the middle of the night, like so many other times, I'll sneak off to the fence. But this time, I'll go over, and I won't come back. It's best this way. Nobody has to suffer. They won't kill me or throw me to the zombies before I'm ready. My sister will think I was eaten by a bear. Or maybe they'll tell her that I got drunk and fell off a cliff. She wouldn't be surprised. My lips have touched more whiskey than water since Thomas turned. I walk out of the house and towards the crowd of people gathering in the center of the house circle. A big table is in the very center. I go up to Evangeline, my sister, who is setting up the tables. "Why the big celebration?" She looks up from the utensils and napkins. He wants to celebrate nobody being infected in the last year. She hesitates. Thomas marks the last person bitten. My eye twitches, but Eva doesn't seem to notice. I walk away from her without another word. I cannot hurt them. I cannot hurt Eva like this. I will leave tonight, after the feast, so I can have one last goodbye. I go back inside our house and get out my best outfit, the only dress that I had left, and my bright diamond heels, the most expensive thing I still had. My mother and father had gifted them to me before they were killed. Not by zombies, by a human, long before the apocalypse even started. I've never worn them to try and preserve them, just in case the apocalypse ever ended. I had a false hope that someday things would be normal again, and I would graduate or have my wedding in diamond heels. But I messed everything up. Eva will get my heels. She's begged for them for years, but I'm wearing them to the feast. Night falls quickly, and the people have put torches up next to every house, and at the corner of the feasting table, I serve myself a tall glass of liquor. I don't want to feel anything when the zombies take me. I can see the townspeople eyeing me and then staring at my drink. Everybody in town knows about me. The girl that used to have the kindest eyes and a bubbling personality. The girl whose eyes have lost their shimmer, whose soul has turned bitter. The girl who kept to herself inside her house and plugged her ears at every town gathering. Until now. It's good to see you, Nevada, Tristan says from behind me. I turn my head around and smile at him. Yes, it is. It's a lovely night that you've arranged for the town. He laughs. It's what I do best, sweets. I smile at that. My nickname since I was a little girl. I'll miss Tristan. He walks over to greet a couple that just approached the table. I look around the field to see happy people, dancing and singing, drinking, eating, and cheering. Oh God, what am I still doing here? It's not just my bite that could infect them. It's me. I've been infecting the town, my sister, and Tristan. I don't fit here anymore. I suck up their happiness. I don't belong. I have to leave, right now. I quickly find Eva and ask her to walk with me. What's wrong, Nevada? I flash my most convincing smile at her. Nothing. Just wanted to spend some time with you. She looks at her feet. I love you. You know that, right, kid? I ask her. She looks up at me and smiles. I love you too, no matter what. She hugged me tightly. The first hug she had given me in over a year, and I hugged her back. Listen, Ava, I started. I'm sorry for not being there for her skin. It smells delicious. Her eyes, they're so pretty. I want to know what they would look like in between my teeth. And I bite her, and a couple drops of blood flow from her cheek and into my mouth. I greedily gulp it down, and I crave more. I want to hurt her. I have to hurt her. So I bite deeper, and then she starts to scream. It's an agonizing and ear-piercing scream. I am startled by the scream, and I jump back. And the split second is all I needed to snap out of it. No. No, no. It was never supposed to be like this. I wasn't supposed to hurt her. I run to get help, spitting her blood out of my mouth and wiping my face with my sleeve. I run as fast as I can. "Tristan!" I scream. "Please! Anybody!" I need them to kill me, or to help Eva, if they can. Tristan looks up and walks towards me. A crowd gathers around him, muttering, afraid. "What is it, Nevada?" he asks, obviously agitated. Suddenly the crowd behind him gasps, and Tristan whips his gun out from its holster. I prepare to be shot, but quickly realize he isn't pointing it at me. His gun is pointed at Eva. She is slowly crawling towards us, blood streaming down her face, and an obvious bite marks her cheek. "No, don't shoot her," I scream, and try to lunge towards Tristan. "She's infected," he says as he shoves me off. Eva looks up at me, hurt. There is agony and fear in her eyes, but the thing that she feels most is clear: betrayal. Tristan pulls the trigger. Once, twice, and a final time. I fall to the ground beside her. Bullet holes pierce her small body. She's dead. She hasn't turned yet, but they killed her. She's dead forever. What have I done? Tristan and another man drag me off of her, and Tristan pulls me into a tight hug, forcing me to face away from her body. But I feel no guilt anymore. I want to rip Tristan's flesh off of his bones. I want to taste his tendons, his blood. I push away from him. I can't hurt another person. "Shoot me, Tristan." He looks at me perplexed. "What? No, no, I'm not going to shoot you. You can't ask me to take your life." I look up at him. No tears in my eyes, no shame, only hunger and rage. "I bit her, so shoot me too." Tristan raises his gun again, but hesitates. I'm already turned. It won't kill me. I slide my heels off and place them in the grass. The crowd follows my every move. Bury Evangeline in these. I sit in the grass and nod at Tristan, instructing him to pull the trigger. His hand shakes as he walks towards me, pressing his gun to my temple. "Goodbye, Nevada," he says, forcing a smile. but I can see his eyes are full of tears. I look straight into his eyes, and his mention of my name, not my nickname, my old life, snaps me back to reality. I sob, big and ugly sobs, and I only cry harder at the sight of my dead sister. "I don't want to be shot," I shout. But Tristan doesn't move his gun. "I know. Just close your eyes and don't think about it." I hear a sob creeping into his throat, so I just do as he says. I shut my eyes and wring my hands together. "Say hello to Thomas for me, sweets," he whispers in my ear, and everything goes quiet. I wake up to birds chirping, wind blowing through the trees, and the sight of my Thomas. "Thomas!" I jump up, but I feel a pounding headache. I put my hand to my forehead and feel a steady stream of blood coming from a bullet. But I don't care. Thomas is here. He holds my face. "I've missed you, love." January 21st. It was another one of those days. The rain was pouring down like iron sheets. The train had come half an hour late, and I had lost my wallet in the station bathroom. In moments like these, you truly wonder whether a higher power was out to get you. When the train finally pulled up at 1:30, I glared it down. Most people would have been blown away by the pristine white sheen, the unnatural silence of the engine, or the blast of sub-zero aircon that streamed out of the open doors. But not me. 21 years of life had taught me enough about the world. I trudged onto the carriage at the end and plopped myself down on the backmost seat. If I had been just 10 years younger, no, even 2 months younger, I might have enjoyed the richness of the leather or the antique smell of the wooden armrests. But I wasn't the young fool that I once was. As we slowly pulled out of the gloomy building, I finally let out the breath I had been holding in all day. I knew where I was going, of course. I knew what I was going to do. Even without the map pasted on the chair in front of me, I knew the name of my destination in my bones. Sunset Station, where my path ended. I closed my eyes, listening to the rain platter against the window like bullets. The last lullaby I'd ever enjoy, I supposed. I fiddled with a golden chain strung around my neck. Not even a minute passed by when someone tapped my shoulder. "Is this seat taken?" I prized my eyes open and felt my heart skip a beat. She had flawless skin, about a shade darker than sandstone. Her jet black hair cascaded down in smooth waterfalls, gently brushing against her lower back. They formed a loose curtain over her chocolate eyes, which glittered like galaxies. A burgundy jacket was draped over her shoulders, the velvet seeming softer than cat fur. Her nails were dabbed with a light layer of wine nail polish, complementing her lips. Something about her seemed oddly familiar to me, even though I'd never met her before. "Is it taken?" she repeated. Her voice was a soft jingle, a quiet chortle. I blinked. No, I let out a tiny groan when she plopped herself down, the smell of vanilla following her. The one thing I didn't want to do was engage in conversation on the tail end of my journey. So of course, it was the first thing that happened. We sat in silence for a while, the pinging of the bullets of rain making the only sound in the carriage. I glanced out the window and heaved a sigh. The same flooded fields, dreary hills, the same ashen sky. I guess it wasn't much to miss. The speakers crackled to life, interrupting my train of thought. "Welcome on board the Destiny Line. The next stop is Sunset Station, where this service ends." Sunset, sunset, sunset. "Are you going to Sunset Station?" the woman asked. I started and silently cursed myself. "Oh, yes, I am. Didn't mean to disturb you." I chanced a glance at her face again. Where had I seen her before? A wide grin spread, flashed across her rose lips. "That's splendid," she purred, blatantly ignoring all of the subtle hints I was dropping. As if on cue, she swiveled towards me. "I heard there's a beautiful, ethereal wooden bridge there that overlooks a waterfall. You planning on going? My journey ends there." I didn't bother elaborating. She tilted her head, studying me as if I were a helpless guinea pig. I hated that, the way her brown eyes drilled right through me and came out the other side. There was something off about her. I just couldn't place my finger on what it was. Why did it all seem so eerily familiar? "So you have gone there before," she pressed, her breath the sickening smell of peppermint. "Surely you must have gone there with someone else." "Yes." The word slipped out of my mouth like an eel slipping out of wet hands. "How delightful!" she exclaimed with a sharp giggle. "I did too." "Who did you go with?" The question was a wrecking ball. Who? Her voice was a gong, the words, the beats ringing in my mind. "My fiancé." Her stare was like a magnet, drawing out the words from my lips. Or, at least, she was. My voice was dark and bitter. "What business do you have with my life? I'm only interested in my own life." She stared at her palms. "At least, I hope I am. Something happened to me, and I need your help in making sense of it." That struck a chord with me. "I'm sure you loved her, as I once did to my boyfriend." She was the fire to my ice, the black to my white, the day to my night, the sun to my moon, the joy to my grief, the good to my evil, the hope to my grief, the solace to my rage, the life to my death. We were worlds and eons apart, but we were perfect together. Every second I spent with her was an hour of paradise. The ground she stepped on was kissed by God. She was my Polaris, when I was sailing across the ocean of my life. A single teardrop crept down my cheek, the hot scar of the past. She's dead now. Since when? Since 2 months ago. Died in a tragic accident. I coughed and started fiddling with the chain again. Something flashed in the woman's eyes. Car crash, shattered spine. Her voice sounded like an autumn breeze, hiding the cold of winter in the warmth of summer. Dead in the night of the 21st of January. Each word she spoke sent flashes of red across my vision. Gray Malibu came out of nowhere. Yeah? I narrowed my eyes at the woman. How did you know? My boyfriend knew someone who died on the 21st in a car crash as well. She cleared her throat. How did you meet her? At a university. We both majored in criminology. We matched each other's cautiousness and prudence. And you studied in criminology as well. Met him when I was an undergraduate. It's funny, really, how similar our two stories are. It truly was. She turned to me again, scanning me up and down. What aren't you telling me? What do I have to tell you? The real question is, what aren't you telling me? Sighing, she murmured, I'm trying to find out why my life took a turn for the worse 2 months ago. And now, suddenly, this morning, I woke up to find that no one knew me, and the world's colors were bleached. So please, I need your help. Her lips were truly interesting. The way they pursed. They were perfectly arched, like Cupid's bow. Where had I seen them before? What do you need my help with? On the day of the accident, what were you feeling? Grief. Are you sure? What kind of question is that? Of course I was. Again, are you sure? What are you implying here? I spat, clenching my fists. I hated her so much then. The way she never flicked her eyes off of me for 1 second. What I'm saying, she continued, is that you and I both know that you felt something else that night. Guilt. Her voice was the buzz of a beehive. I doubt most people would have liked it. I swear, though, I heard it somewhere before. In the distance, the train began to whistle. I chanced a glance out the window. The rainy plains had been blotted out by a black tunnel. The Stygian wall was a nice reflection of my mind, I suppose. All aboard the Destiny Express. Yes, I snarled. I felt guilty. I felt guilty because we'd been arguing right before she ran out of the house. I tried to call her back. She didn't even look. Before she dashed across the road, something clicked inside my head. But you knew that already, didn't you? Goosebumps spread across my arm when she nodded. The hazy puzzle was slowly getting clearer. What were you arguing about? Why would I think it would be better for both of us if you stop hiding the truth, she interrupted. So, I'm going to ask again. What were you quarreling about? I'm sorry. Those deep brown eyes weren't galaxies. That was my mistake. They were black holes, sucking in everything. I was confronting her about what I saw that afternoon. My voice was black ice. I came home early, and I discovered that there were 2 other people in the house, being intimate with each other. The man, I still don't know who. The woman? Well, needless to say, I did know who it was. I shuddered. She nodded again, slower this time. What did she say to you when you confronted her? That I didn't really love her? That I never really did? That I was exploiting her for money? Were you? Well, I filched the occasional penny or 2. I winced under her glare. Fine. I forced her to pay for my tuition fees. She has so much money that she doesn't know what to do with it anyhow. Might as well put it to good use. I toyed with my golden chain again. The woman didn't seem to agree with me, but she moved on. All right. I think you've helped me clear up a lot of problems now. Before I could heave a sigh of relief, she continued. But there's still one last question I want to ask you. What could that be? I started rubbing my fingers against the golden chain. The chain had the dull, tingling smell of iron. Just like something else. Something Darkwa. Where were you at the moment of the accident? Shadows gathered around her eyes. I told you already. Which is where, again? Steel hands gripped my lungs. I was calling out to her, trying to stop her from recklessly dashing. She didn't listen to me. Was I imagining things? Or was there a flicker somewhere on her face? No, her neck was flickering. It was slowly bending, slowly becoming deformed. Or was I imagining things? She spoke 2 words. You're lying. The temperature seemed to plummet. What? You're lying. You know it in your heart. You've known for 2 months. Oh my. Death is a lie. No, no, no. It couldn't be happening. But it was staring right back at me. The truth clicked, like the final piece of the jigsaw puzzle fitting in. I knew now. I knew everything. Fine. 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 I admit it. I wasn't running after her. I wasn't calling out to her. I wasn't trying to stop her. No. I'm a double-faced liar. Yes, that's what I am. A psychopath. My fiancée did not die in an accident. I killed her. I killed her. I killed her. I killed her. I dragged her out of the house. I threw her in front of a speeding gray Malibu. Oh, I watched her die. I knew it in my bones. Oh, then what are you? How are you here, haunting me to my very last day? Why have you come back? Why? Are you even real? That, she whispered. You will never know. You have lived 2 months in anguish because I never truly left you. Every hour of your life has felt like a tortured second crawling by. Just look at what's hanging from your neck, the golden mark of Cain. I tore it off the chain and pressed it against my face. "No, forgive me, please." Tears streamed down my face, a waterfall of guilt. "I'll do anything." The train came to a stop at the station. Sunset. The end of the line. Oh, her smile. I hated her smile. The way they were draped over the fury within her. She glanced out the window, out of the station, out of the world. I followed her gaze at the bridge overlooking the waterfall, where it all began. There's always a way out. She stood up. How horrible she looked. The way her head was tilted to the side, almost as if her spine was broken. "I trust you'll know what to do. Goodbye, Daigel." She stepped off the train. "To the person who buys my house. Months ago, I uprooted my entire life and moved across the country with very little plan. My wife left me out of the blue. With no tether, I cashed out my 401k and threw caution to the wind. I drove until I saw snow before deciding to try out the small town life. After nailing down a full-time job and growing tired of life in the town's only hotel, I reached out to a realtor and asked her to show me the house that's been on the market the longest. A fixer-upper was just what I needed. The realtor didn't have much information on the home outside of the basics, but I was sold as soon as I saw it. 3 stories, isolated deep in the woods. What more could a man looking to start over with a project ask for? After closing, I was given a fill folder containing all the important information. With all the standard documents was a handwritten letter from the previous homeowner. The contents of the letter have me questioning if I made the right choice, but I've never been one to turn down a challenge. I have typed the contents of the letter below. To the person who buys my house, congratulations on the purchase of your new home. Or perhaps, should I say, you're welcome for your new home. I can only imagine what type of person you may be. A first-time home buyer? A newlywed couple just starting out? A growing family looking for more space? A retiree longing to be away from the hustle and bustle of the city? Or even just an investor looking for rental properties? The possibilities are endless, but no less exciting. Just as exciting as when my late husband and I first purchased the property so many years ago. The tree covering so far off the main road made such a serene setting. We just couldn't picture ourselves living anywhere else. However, all things must come to an end. Such is life. I'm not as young as I once was. My children worried for me out here all alone. Or so they say. My oldest daughter decided the property was too much for me to care for on my own anymore, and encouraged me to move to the old folks' home in the next town. As loath as I was to leave the home we spent such wonderful years in, I could no longer argue with her. The upkeep was getting to be a little much for these old bones. I agreed on one condition: that the home not be put up for sale until my death. So, if you are receiving this letter, I have shuffled off this mortal coil. That also means that the house has most likely sat vacant for some time. In that case, there are a few matters of housekeeping you should be aware of. As you may have noticed when you viewed the property, the house is quite the old gal. Her 3 stories stand tall and formidable in the dense forest surrounding it. Though the trees tower over her, she will not be cowed. The roof has held up better than we ever expected with so many trees around. It was replaced in 2018, another urging of my oldest daughter. Though it had only a few cosmetic issues at the time, the trees closest to the home are sturdy and hardly ever dare to drop their branches directly on the roof. By the time you move in, it may be time for a fresh coat of paint, though I found the house does prefer to be a light blue with white trim. She likes to stand out amongst the darkness of the forest. I'll never forget the way the old gal gleamed at Christmas time, with string lights shining bright enough to light up the snow all around. Oh, I do hope you have the most wondrous Christmases there. Anyway, I've gotten off track. Yes, the house will require a new coat of paint, and I'm sure you will decorate the inside as you see fit. Before you start to move too much around, be aware that some of the items in the house have been strategically placed. For you to fully understand what a treasure you have just purchased, I feel it is pertinent for me to tell you a little story. My Reginald and I purchased the home fully furnished before any of our children were brought into this world. The first year we lived there was pure bliss. Young and in love, we dedicated almost all of our time to each other. My husband fondly referred to this time as our honeymoon phase. One of our favorite activities was exploring the vast property surrounding us. When the weather did not permit roaming, we explored the home itself, though from the outside it appears as any manor in the woods would. Inside is much to be discovered. During that first year, we enjoyed the convenience of it being fully furnished and move-in ready. But over time, I yearned to decorate, to make the space my own. Reginald, ever the obedient husband, humored me. We started by taking down every painting that hung on the walls, deciding which to keep, which to sell away, and which to simply move to a different area. That is when the first odd discovery was made. Behind a great many of the paintings, there were holes, right in the plaster walls. Some appeared to be methodically cut in perfect squares. Others, as though a fist was punched straight through it. We, of course, decided that those would eventually be covered back up. I piled the painting up in the drawing room and set about cleaning the walls. By the end of the day, I had yet to decide on what exactly to do with them. So I let them lie and went to bed. In the morning, however, they were all hung perfectly back in their spots, as if all my work had never happened. For days, I assumed Reginald had done it, and he assumed I had. We ultimately didn't speak of it until it was too late, when my Reginald started back to work as supervisor of the factory in town. I resumed my endeavor to make the home feel like it was mine. I hated the big rugs scattered all around the place. I've always preferred a nice hardwood floor. No need for carpets that hold all the dirt and hair that's dragged in. The furniture was easy enough to move out of my way, and the rugs all rolled up nicely. I was mighty proud of my hard work until I got a good look at the wood. Large, dark, discolored splotches marred what should have been beautiful hardwood hiding under those ghastly rugs, which I'm sure you've seen. Unfortunately, much like the paintings, the rugs remained. I'd go into more detail, but some of the full truths have been lost to time. But I will tell you, be careful what you look behind or under. Though the house allowed me to dust and paint and add decor as my heart desired, it did not allow me to leave any of its secret spots uncovered. Behind dressers, cabinets, doors, paintings, mirrors, and under couches, chairs, and beds, the house hides. After the first year, I gave up trying to rearrange and became content with adding a few of my own touches here and there. I think that once the house realized I'd stopped trying to change it so much, it settled down. For a while at least, we entered a time of peace again. But the monotony of loneliness began to get to me. Thankfully, we soon welcomed our oldest daughter. As soon as she arrived, the house awoke with laughter and joy. All hours of the night, she would giggle, and the house seemed to echo with it, those echoes long lingering even after she fell asleep. As we welcomed more children, it seemed that no matter how much we tied, the house remained scattered with toys. It was as if I'd turn my back and they'd all jump right off the shelf and resume their places on the floor. The never-ending chore of putting away made me weary to my bones. In a stroke of wisdom, my Reginald decided one summer to send the children to my mother's for a week. She lived on the coast, never one for the colder air where we chose to live. We didn't see her often, and the children did love her so. Off they went without a complaint, leaving my love and I alone for the first time in over a decade. We didn't know what to do with ourselves. That first night, it was as if we were newlyweds again. But I won't traumatize you with any of that. We felt so young again, only waking when the sun finally shone through our bedroom window, with no rush to feed the masses. When we finally emerged from our bed a little after noon, we walked into an unexpected scene. Every toy, book, pen, shoe, and piece of sports equipment that belonged to the children had been strewn about the first floor in the most uncivilized manner. There was no question that the house had been perfectly clean the night before. Our first thought was that we'd been burgled, that someone had broken in, thinking we'd all left for the coast. The only problem is, we told no one the children were leaving, and we had no neighbors to have noticed their departure. Regardless, we checked for signs of forced entry on all the doors and windows. Finding nothing, we were forced to believe it was whatever force we had once felt in our home, agitated with us once more. As you've probably ascertained, the house is very particular. We had come to accept not being able to move the furniture or pictures, but were only just realizing that the house did not like many of the new things we'd brought in either. How many times had I picked certain toys up off the floor, only to find them there again in the morning? How many times had I unfairly blamed the children for messes they claimed they knew nothing about? That morning, we saw the truth of the matter, and I knew something had to change. The children didn't deserve my anger or anxiety. They were not to blame. When they returned, I was sure to tell them as much. But before then, we had to find a way to coexist again with the forces in the house. What should have been a week of relaxation and reconnecting became a week of trial and error. On the first day, we tidied the house, putting everything back where we thought everything should go. Each room made perfect. Then we waited for the first item to fall out of place. As if the house was testing us, it took hours for anything to happen that first day. Then it started, slowly at first, giving us time to notice the items that were out of place, time to correct. It seemed to go in order of the things that bothered it the most, or maybe just the longest. The first toy to go was a set of bells we'd gotten when our oldest was small. The set was a popular toy amongst all our babies, with our youngest being nearly 8 at the time. These bells hadn't truly rung joyously through the house in years, yet they always made their way off the shelf onto the rug. Our family's peace was more important than any sentimentality, or at least that's what my husband and I agreed. And into the bin they went. Quickly, we noticed patterns. Toys that made too much noise. Shoes that left scuffs on the floor. Sports equipment that may or may not have been involved in a few broken windows and busted light bulbs. Books that sat too heavy on the overburdened bookshelves. Room by room we went, removing any and all items the house found to be offensive. It was by no means an easy undertaking. So many items had many more years of use left in them. But knowing what I knew, I could no longer sacrifice my sanity for a few boxes full of possessions. When the last box of offending items left the property, it was as if the house itself took a deep, calming breath. I hadn't quite realized just how stressed I'd been feeling until I didn't feel it anymore. Weight I'd grown accustomed to bearing eased off my shoulders. The air was lighter, the lights were brighter, and the house even seemed to smell better. Not that there was a noticeable bad smell before. Everything just felt better. That night, Reginald and I slept deeply for the first time in years, waking refreshed and ready for anything. I was ready for my children to come home. This week had been the longest we'd been apart since the youngest was born. I'd spent 2 weeks in the hospital that time, but that's neither here nor there. We had 2 more days before my mother would return them to us, sun-kissed and spoiled rotten in the best way. In those 2 days, I made time to sit quietly and listen to the house the way I used to when it was just Reginald and myself. Familiar creaks and groans greeted my ears. My senses were filled with the house. The smell of wood, water, earth, detergents, fabric, food, all seemed to swirl around me. For a long while, it was all just the normal feelings of home, of any home. Every house I'd ever lived in had the same smells and sounds. I assume every house in the whole world has the same base set of smells, sounds, and lights. I knew there was something past that, though, here. So I waited. A few months back, I'd read a book on meditation, hoping to help lift some of the stress I'd been buried under. While I waited, I took a few quests from my readings. I methodically relaxed each muscle, starting at my toes and working my way to my head. I felt each breath as it traveled in and out of my lungs. I tried to tune my ears inward to listen to the beating of my heart, attempting to hear the blood rushing through my veins. That's when I finally heard the breathing. It wasn't my own. It was off-beat of mine. Reginald wasn't home. We had no pets, but the slow, deep, steady breaths were just a whisper in my ear. I focused with all my might on the sound, hoping to pinpoint the direction it was coming from. Realization dawned on me. I was all around me, as if I was inside a lung. Then, a heartbeat, slower than my own, reverberated around me. Slowly, I opened my eyes. What I saw changed everything. Ever so lightly, the walls billowed in and out. Ever so slightly, the chandelier above my head rhythmically bobbed, as if contracting, thrumming. Everything in the central family room moved in a steady beat. How many days had we spent in this room? The majority of our lives circulated in this room, where we were most often all together as a family, the way a family room should be used. We often joked that this room was the heart of the house, because there was always so much love here. We were not wrong. This room truly holds the heart of the home. You may think I'm crazy, but I am telling you, here and now, the house is alive. It is not haunted. There are no goblins or ghouls. The house itself is a living, breathing being. A being that I have cared for, just as it has cared for me, for more years than I care to count. You see, my daughter never believed. She did not understand. When I finally agreed that I was too old to care for the house on my own, it was because the house told me so. Not her. I was growing too old to care for it, and in turn, it could no longer care for me. It needs someone younger, someone to breathe new life into it again. And if you care for it, it will care for you. When tended to properly, it will multiply your life and give you more than you can ever imagine. I do hope Carmen found the right person to take on the challenge. I pray the house does not miss us too terribly much. If you follow the rules, then it should grow to love you, too, I'm sure. With love, Cynthia. Rule 1. Don't move the furniture. Rule 2. Don't leave any holes uncovered. Rule 3. Don't make changes. Only fix things that break. Rule 4. Don't put anything on the mantel in the bedroom. Rule 5. Never throw balls inside. Rule 6. Never scream at your partner inside. On the grounds is fine. Rule 7. Always walk gently. Rule 8. Always lock the doors. Rule 9. Always listen to the house. Take care of it, and it will take care of you. I have lived in the house for a week now. What I thought to be the ramblings of a crazy old woman who wanted nothing more than to stay with her home have quickly become undeniable truths. On my second night, the house welcomed me in a way only it could have. I'm not sure if this makes me just as crazy as her, but I've vowed to care for this home as long as it cares for me. We're off to a great start. Rakotsbrücke, the Devil's Bridge. Rakotsbrücke, the Devil's Bridge. Whispers of mystery had long shrouded Rakotsbrücke, the legendary Devil's Bridge in Kromlau, Germany. Stories had swirled about its eerie perfection for generations, how its reflection in the still waters formed a flawless circle. Some believed it was merely an optical illusion. Others claimed it was something more, a portal to the unknown. Hans and Gerda Schmidt had grown up in the shadow of these legends. Their childhoods were filled with hushed tales passed down through the years, some dating back over a century. But the most chilling story was always the same. At certain times of the year, the bridge's reflection wasn't just a trick of the light. It was a gateway, and those who crossed it at the wrong moment were never seen again. Most dismissed such stories as mere folklore, But Hans and Gerda couldn't ignore the unsettling number of disappearances. Determined to separate fact from fiction, they spent months scouring old newspaper archives, compiling every recorded vanishing link to Rakotsbrücke. With each faded article, each cryptic account, a pattern emerged. If their calculations were correct, the next opening of the gateway was near. And this time, they would be there to witness it. Their research had uncovered a chilling pattern. The phenomenon occurred only once in winter, but was far more frequent during unseasonably warm periods in the warmer months. This week, temperatures were set to spike well above normal, and Hans and Gerda were convinced that the anomaly was bound to happen again. Armed with sophisticated audio and video equipment, Hans, Gerda, and several close friends set up camp near the bridge early Monday morning. Their goal was simple: capture undeniable proof of the anomaly. They weren't the first to try, of course, but they were determined to be the first to succeed. Each member of the group would take turns operating the equipment, ensuring the bridge was never left unwatched. Gerda was first. Luck would have to be on her side. She steadied the camera, framing the sublimely unsettling structure as it loomed over the river, its reflection dissolving into the rising morning mist. Days passed as the majestic bridge stood in solemn silence. Time was running out. By Thursday, tension had given way to celebration. The group partied, drank, and danced near the eerie silhouette of Rakotsbrücke, their initial excitement fading into the rhythm of the night. Laughter echoed through the trees, until a sudden burst of blinding white light shattered the darkness. A collective gasp cut through the air. Hans, Gerda, and the others sprinted toward the equipment, hearts pounding. Julio, the group's cameraman for that night, stood motionless, his camera locked onto the event. Then he sighed and shook his head. False alarm. They followed his gaze to the source. A biker gang rolling through the woods, their headlights gleaming off the water, engines rumbling like distant thunder. It was an illusion. The spacing of their bikes on the bridge and the reflection of their lights momentarily brought the bridge alive. From a distance, the bridge looked like a space portal had formed. Are you recording this? Gerda asked Julio. Never stopped. At least we can add it to the footage of our trip when we edit the video. The air deflated from their lungs. Shoulders slumped. Heads hung low. Disappointment settled over the camp like a heavy fog. By Sunday, hope had dried up completely. They packed some of their things, one by one, muttering the same defeated refrain. We'll try again next year. Ever the optimist, Gerda climbed onto a picnic table, raising her beer in defiance. I want to thank all of you for coming to witness what never was, she announced, her voice carrying over the quiet camp. But tonight, we're forgetting about that damn gateway. Tonight, we party like it never existed. A roar of approval followed, and soon, The music and laughter returned. None of them noticed the waters beneath Rakotsbrücke begin to shimmer. None of them saw the perfect gaseous cloud take shape inside the circle once more. Even Julio, who found himself once again on camera duty, did not notice the bridge coming alive. It was midnight, and the others were still lost in their revelry at the campsite. None of them was there to witness what was unfolding. He might have caught it sooner, if not for Fräulein Gretchen. She had been eyeing him since they passed his group while hiking on Monday. Now, as the others partied, she had cozied beside him, drawn to the quiet observer behind the camera. Since he did not drink, he had no problem operating the equipment, though tonight his attention was divided. That night, Julio had his blanket on the ground. Fräulein Gretchen and he were making out when he caught a glimmer of light out of the corner of his eye. Standing up immediately, he checked to see if the camera and audio were working. Gretchen was still playfully fondling his ear with her lips. "Stop. This is important. Can't you see what's happening?" he said to her with a stern but playful voice. "Look at it. It's getting brighter and brighter. Come on, let's get closer." The luminous gateway had a compelling allure, almost trance-like, and it kept tugging at their interest. At the river's edge, there was a small rowboat. They went down to the water, determined to get a closer look. Meanwhile, the light got bright enough to grab the attention of the others partying at the campsite. Hans was the first to notice the light. "Look, guys, the forest is beginning to light up. Must be responding to our partying," he said playfully. "No, I think it's the bridge," Gerda said as she took off, running toward Julio's location. The rest of the gang took off after her. There was no sign of Julio near the video equipment, and the forest glow was getting brighter and brighter. Gerda turned toward the bridge, her thoughts conflicting. She wanted her full attention to find Julio and not care about the bridge. Yet the bridge was mesmerizing. Her heart was racing as the ominous light loomed large. "Julio! Julio!" the rest of the group yelled. The yells from her friends temporarily knocked her back to reality. She saw a small rowboat drift through the fog on the far side of the river. Her stomach clenched. That same boat was near them when they first set up the equipment on Monday, and it hadn't moved until now. "Guys, get over here!" Gerda's voice cut through the tense air. She was standing near the equipment. As they gathered around, she maneuvered the camera so everyone could see it. The camera began playback with the motorcycles, and they watched as the humming of the bikes slowly transformed the water. "Look at the water, guys. It appears to be vibrating. Would the sound waves have that big of an effect on the water?" Hans asked. "It must have," she replied as she zoomed in on the water. "When I go back and view the water, it is always completely calm. Something had to stir it. Gerda forwarded the camera to the moment the bridge came alive, and what they saw blew their minds. As they began watching, they heard a female voice. Stunned, Gerda rewound the tape, and sure enough, there was a flirtatious voice in the background. Maybe Julio is at the nearest hotel? A voice in the background whispered, drawing quiet snickers from the group. Quiet! Gerda snapped as they continued watching the video. Then they saw it. The gateway. Look at the bridge! My God, it's real! There's Julio and the girl. Hans pointed. They watched as the two made their way down the steep slope. Julio jumped in the boat first and turned to help Gretchen aboard. Freeing themselves from the riverbed, he slowly rowed toward the ominous, bright light, as if he were in a trance. Gretchen sat in front of him, leaning back on his chest, mesmerized by the gaseous light. They were approximately 30 yards from the gateway, and the recording stopped. What? What happened? Hans asked. I don't know, Gerda replied. No, this can't be happening, she shouted. She rewound the tape for a few seconds and played it back, but the same ending showed each time they watched. Scheisse, Gerda exclaimed. What do we do now? We have 2 people missing, and the tape shows us something, only up to the point where we think they have disappeared. What are we going to tell people? We tell the truth, Gerda. This is why we came here, to find the truth. Hans added, but we don't have the truth. Only partial truths that add to the folklore. This tape will open up more questions than answers, and we will at the tail end of it searching for more clues. Lynn, Gerda's best friend from London, walked over to her, put her hands on her shoulder, and turned her around so she could cry. Once Gerda's head hit her shoulder, she began to sob uncontrollably. Lynn knew the effect the events had on her. All the time and energy she put into this led to nothing but more questions. She also knew that deep down inside, Gerda wanted to see the gateway in action, even if it was at the cost of her friend's life, which made her feel even worse. Lynn lifted her head. Hey, don't worry. You do have something far more than you ever had. We all know what happened here. Most of it is on tape. I say we immediately make a copy of this tape, take it to the police, and let them investigate their copy. And we have concrete evidence to examine on our own. Next time we are here, we will be much better off than before. Lynn's right, Gerda. We now know a lot more than we ever did. We know the vibrations from the bikes started the gateway. We know that we can't stare at it because of its trance-like powers. And we know the best time to be here and get another shot. Hans added, Yes, that's right, Gerda. The others chimed in. 1 year to the day, the crew set up again. In honor of Julio, they set up a makeshift burial plot at the exact location where the camera stood last year. Gerda felt this new location was better. It was on the other side of the lake and had a better view. This time, the crew was on high alert. There was no partying this time. Their campground was just up the hill from the camera, and they could see partial spots of the lake and bridge from their tents. As they were finishing up with their tents, Lynn ran over to Gerda. "Look at those two over there, Gerda." She pointed. "No, that can't be." They took off running over the bridge, yelling, "Julio! Julio!" A young man turned around as they approached, staring at them, confused. "Yes, how do you know my name?" The unwritten pages. 37 minutes after getting off the Route 19 bus, Bronwyn Miller realized her mistake. The familiar weight against her hip had disappeared because her leather-bound diary, which was her 3-year companion, wasn't there. Her fingers instinctively searched for the familiar worn cover, but discovered just the empty pocket of her oversized cardigan. She abruptly paused on the sidewalk while whispering, "No, no, no," mentally retracing her steps. The last places she visited before reaching the current sidewalk included the coffee shop and the bus stop, followed by the bus ride. She remembered having her diary at the bus stop with her, where she wrote during every wait because it had become her routine. The diary wasn't just any journal. The diary held all her unfiltered thoughts and secrets for 3 years, which she never expressed out loud. This was Bronwyn in her true form, without her deliberate public image. She started running back toward the bus stop, which was 6 blocks away. How likely was it for her diary to remain undisturbed on that bench in a city of 4 million? 0. As it turned out. An elderly woman sat on the bench and fed pigeons, while no leather-bound book appeared in sight. She knew that it was gone and felt a strange emptiness inside. Bronwyn reached the point of thinking the situation wasn't as terrible after 3 days passed. Someone had probably thrown it away. Bronwyn confirmed the transit authority had no records of anyone turning in her diary. Then came the notification. Bronwyn received a phone notification while she was working. A new email with the subject line, "I think this belongs to you?" A link represented the entire email, which lacked any other content. Upon clicking on the link, a basic blog titled "Pages Found" appeared on the web page, showing its first post created earlier that morning. "Sometimes I wonder if anyone would notice if I disappeared. Mom would, obviously. But would she be sad or just inconvenienced? She's spent so many years being disappointed in me that maybe it would be a relief. I think about disappearing a lot lately. Not dying, just vanishing. Starting over somewhere. No one knows the Bronwyn who always messes up." Her heart stopped. She'd written those words just last week, following her argument with her mother. The words matched exactly with her diary entries, which she had written by hand. As she scrolled through the page, she discovered 3 new entries, which contained her personal reflections written during the past month. The content hasn't reached extreme damage yet, but it's personal enough to make her feel exposed. At the bottom of the page was a comment box, and above it, a message. Bronwyn, if you're reading this, comment here. We need to talk about what you wrote on your remaining pages. She didn't sleep that night. She kept refreshing the blog compulsively while watching another entry show up. I had that dream again, where I'm giving my presentation and realize I'm completely naked. Dr. Winters says it's about vulnerability, about my fear of being exposed. How ironic is that? I pay someone $200 an hour to tell me I'm afraid of people seeing who I really am. Maybe she's right, though. I've spent so much energy crafting this competent, put-together version of myself. What would happen if people saw the real mess underneath? After hours of intense deliberation, Bronwyn typed the words, "This is private. Please stop posting my words. What do you want?" The response came within minutes. "Meet me tomorrow, 3 p.m. The bus stop where you left it." Bronwyn arrived at 2:45, her hands shaking. Before going to the meeting, she instructed Martha about her location and insisted that Martha call the authorities if she failed to report back by 3:30. At exactly 3 o'clock, her phone buzzed with another link. "I see you, Bronwyn. I've been watching you for a while now, even before I found your diary. You take this bus every Tuesday and Thursday. Look to your left, at the cafe across the street." Through the cafe window, she could see a figure holding up what appeared to be her diary. Her heart raced as she stood at the curb, until a gap in the traffic opened for her to cross. Bronwyn identified the figure sitting at the window table as she walked closer. "Eliza," she said in disbelief. Bronwyn's quiet marketing co-worker, Eliza Chen, sat down reading Bronwyn's diary. "Why?" was all Bronwyn could manage. Eliza pushed the diary toward her. "I found it. I opened it to find out whose it was. And once I realized it was yours, I should have just returned it. But then I read a bit more." She paused. "You wrote about feeling invisible, about no one really seeing you. So you tracked me down to publish my personal feelings on the internet?" Bronwyn hissed. Her face flushed as she confessed that she knew what she did was wrong. "But I recognized myself in your words. That feeling of being invisible, together with the necessity to hide behind a facade. My intention was to demonstrate that someone truly saw you and listened to what you said." "You thought what? That I'd be grateful?" Bronwyn snatched up her diary and held it close against her body. Eliza didn't know what thoughts she had and looked down. "I've taken the blog down. All the posts are deleted. Your words made me feel connected to you. My whole life, I've felt as though no one would even realize I was gone. What you did was a violation, Bronwyn stated firmly. You had no right. I know. I'm sorry. Eliza spoke once more when Bronwyn began to walk away. There's something else you should know. On page 43, you stated that you haven't encountered anyone who truly understood your feelings. That's not true, Bronwyn. You're not alone. That doesn't make what you did okay. I know, Eliza said quietly. Bronwyn opened her diary to a blank page and started to write as she walked towards the bus stop. Today, I encountered the person who discovered my diary. I discovered that it was Eliza from work who found my diary, rather than a creepy stranger. Eliza expressed her connection with me through the words I wrote. I remain angry, yet feel uneasy about how someone who barely existed to me understood me so well. Eliza mentioned my writing. You possess exceptional writing skills, she remarked. This memory took me back to my creative writing professor during my sophomore year, before I changed my major to business, because my father considered business more practical. These pages represent the sole place where I've openly revealed my desire to write a novel. A week later, Bronwyn found a sealed envelope on her desk with a handwritten note. I understand if you decide never to speak to me again. If you ever do, I must inform you that I have begun writing too. Putting the invisible parts on paper sometimes helps people understand them better. E. That evening, she flipped to page 43 of her diary. I question whether there exists another person who experiences this same sensation of ghosting through their own existence. At times, I feel I could yell in a packed space without anyone listening to me. On Monday, Bronwyn took her usual bus. Eliza occupied the back seat as she wrote notes into her little notebook. Their eyes met briefly before Eliza quickly looked down. Bronwyn took the vacant seat next to Eliza. I got your note. I was sincere when I apologized, Eliza answered, with a voice so faint it was nearly inaudible. What are you writing? Bronwyn asked. Just thoughts. Nothing as eloquent as your words. Your words reveal things that otherwise stay hidden, Eliza resumed. Reading your diary felt as though someone had expressed my inner emotions in words. Bronwyn acknowledged that her actions were still wrong, while showing less anger. I know. After discovering your diary, I started writing my thoughts down myself. The act of writing my thoughts down became helpful after I read your January entry. Writing feels like breathing underwater because you discover air in an environment meant to choke you. Yes, your diary entries reminded me of your desire to write a novel one day. This story is about all the characters you've been imagining since childhood. Bronwyn felt her face flush. Those were private dreams she'd almost forgotten. Eliza said softly, You know that you can do it. Your diary entries read like literature already. The bus came to a halt at its regular destination for Bronwyn. She decided to remain seated instead of exiting as the bus started moving. 6 months later, Bronwyn sat across from Eliza at their regular cafe table by the window. The same table where they'd had their confrontation. Bronwyn declared, "I finished it," while pushing the manuscript toward Eliza across the table. "All thanks to you." Eliza picked up the stack of papers, reading the title page. The Unwritten Pages by Bronwyn Miller. Their initial coffee meetings, which started cautiously, developed into both a genuine friendship and a creative partnership. They gathered every Tuesday evening to write, with Bronwyn working on her novel while Eliza focused on poetry. Bronwyn announced, after taking a sip of her coffee, that she planned to send her manuscript to the literary agent they met at the writer's workshop. Eliza remarked on the strange way things come together. "The moment that brought us together happened because you left your diary on the bus stop." Bronwyn joined in with a playful grin, saying, "You were such a creepy stalker. I prefer to think of myself as the universe's extremely flawed messenger." Eliza's expression grew serious. "What drove me to give you back your diary was something you'd written about your dream to write a novel, but your fear that no one would want to hear your voice. Your diary entry revealed your dream of becoming an author, yet your fear held you back. I came to understand that I was reading the thoughts of an individual who possessed valuable insights, but doubted anyone would listen to them." That night, Bronwyn opened her original diary and flipped to the last page where she started writing a new entry following her confrontation with Eliza. She went back to read her thoughts from 6 months prior. "I don't know if I'll ever fully forgive her, but today I understood something. The experience of being truly seen can evoke simultaneous feelings of fear and awe." Beneath those words, Bronwyn added, "Today I finished my novel." Sometimes the worst moments in our lives become doorways to the best ones. Sometimes a stranger becomes the friend who helps you find your voice. And sometimes being seen is exactly what you needed all along. She shut the diary softly because she was no longer fearful of its contents or the consequences of someone reading them. The words had served their purpose. They had guided her home to herself. The midnight ride. It was a dark night, one of those without any stars to look at, and a dark moon. Not even the universe was interested in what was about to happen. There was no spotlight over me, nor a guiding light to help me escape. As I ran to my car, one of my heels broke, and I twisted my ankle. I took out the shoes and limped to the door while looking for the keys in my purse. Damn big fancy bags. This whole scenario would have been much easier with jeans and sneakers. But that was not something I could change, and dreaming about better times would not help me either. My hands were trembling, and I was about to empty the bag when I touched the furry pom-pom I had attached to my keychain days before. I took out the keys, opened the door, and once I was inside, I locked the car. The street was empty. No one was screaming my name or running after me, and I took a deep breath before starting the motor. When I passed the campus gates, I felt light and smiled. I was free, and I felt happy. Before entering the highway, I stopped at the last traffic light and adjusted the mirror. I could not even remember the last time I touched it. And then, when I lowered it, I saw them smiling at me and waving. I tried to open the door. I wanted to jump out, but Amir moved his arm to my neck and pinned me to my seat. Ezra moved to the front slowly, while I struggled to move or breathe. Suddenly, everything hurt, and I did the only thing I could. I pushed the gas pedal with my foot, and my ankle cracked, making the pain even worse. Ezra took the wheel, while I tried to free myself from the strangling arm. But Amir whispered in my ear, "This will happen, whether you like it or not. I gave you the choice." His teeth sank into my neck, and as the pressure increased in my skin and the wound started to burn, I felt my life running away from me. The blood spilled over my white dress, forming stains that seemed broken rose petals. And shortly after, my head fell on Ezra's lap, and the car stopped in the middle of the highway. "Move her," said Amir. And Ezra grabbed my body and threw it to the back seat like I was weightless. Amir sat in the driver's seat, and once Ezra sat by his side, the car started again. I could barely breathe. The only thought in my mind was how much blood I had lost, and how much more was now running down the leather I was lying in. I had no more pain, but I was starting to feel cold. And although I wanted desperately to scream and cry, I just couldn't. He betrayed me, I thought. He's helping him. I heard the sound of the radio buzzing, and then the music. Sympathy for the devil. Really? I thought, and I felt like laughing, though I couldn't. Would he now take the end of his sleeves and take them out of his jacket? What would the 16-year-old me have done in this situation? I should have been given an option and not forced into this. The sun was rising when I woke up. Everything around me was flooded with orange light, and I felt the warmth as the first rays touched my skin. I did not want to open my eyes fully, but I understood I was not gone, at least not completely, which meant I still had the right to see the sun again. It burned at first, though. Everything hurt, but I did not mind. It was like something else was pushing for me, and my body did not belong to me anymore. I was still in the back of the car, and my dress and the seat were drenched in red. My blood How had I lost so much blood? Why was I awake? I raised my head, and my neck cracked. I never liked that sound. But that day, it was scarier than ever. The light passing through the front window blinded me for a second. But when I got used to it, I saw someone sitting in the passenger seat. I opened my mouth, but the words did not come out. Ezra, I thought, convinced that I still had that power on me, that he would listen to my thoughts, that he would attend my command if Amir were far away from us. Ezra, please. But he did not turn. I moved my arm. I wanted to sit, but I couldn't. My limbs failed me, and the only thing I managed was to grab his arm and fall to the car floor. He moved then, but not the way I expected. I was still holding his sleeve when I saw the blood crossing his arm, the wound in his neck, and his eyes opened, lost, lifeless. Then someone opened the door, grabbed me by the ankles, and dragged me out of the car. I felt the pain once more, like someone was stabbing me with those expensive shoes I had bought weeks before. When my head hit the floor, I closed my eyes. I did not want to see what was about to happen. You complain too much, said Amir, though I knew I was the only one who could hear him. There he was, again, inside my head. You are such a romantic, he continued. He was not helpful, no matter how much you tried to make him. He was not worthy. He helped you, I thought. He was just a pretty puppet, and the puppets are good to play. I still had my eyes closed and felt a tear running down my face. He'll kill me. This all will pass, I thought. Don't be ridiculous, I heard. We have work to do. I don't like to waste talent, tamah, or blood. You should know that about me already. After getting rid of Ezra, he lifted my body as if I were a little rag doll and sat me in the passenger seat. The leather was sticky and smelled funny, but sweet. You'll recover soon. Don't worry. You'll be buying new shoes in no time, he said, as he started the car and put on his sunglasses. The car moved away, and as the sunlight warmed my face, I knew I'd have to come up with a better plan to leave that life, that work, and that man. The hunt never ends. You thought that we wouldn't find out, didn't you? The note read. The man had shivered when he had read those ominous words, as perspiration began to drip down from his temple, the salty liquid seeping into his eyes and temporarily blinding him. This is the end, the man had said to himself in an agitated, trembling whisper as he looked down at the sheet of notepaper which had been left on his office desk. He glanced around at the other employees to see if anyone was looking his way, giving him some indication on who had left the message. But all of them were engaged in their own little world of toting up the facts and figures which were constantly coming through on their computer terminals. What had caused this man to turn deathly white and feel so nauseous? How had those 9 little words on the page that had now turned his world completely upside down come to cause him so much anguish and despair? That unhappy event had happened a week before. So let us now find out what had caused this man, Henry Miller, to end up in this now distressing location where he now found himself. At this moment, he was looking between the slats of a Venetian blind, observing the street outside, and trying as best as he could to remain unseen from the road in front of the building, where he now cringed, frightened out of his wits. How had it come to this? He thought. Last week, he didn't have a care in the world. All was going well at work. And then came that note, and he found himself involved in something that had instantly changed his life. And now he was on the run, constantly looking over his shoulder. And at this moment, hiding in this abandoned building, a structure that had a large sign outside stating that it was condemned and would shortly be torn down. So, how long could he remain here before he had to find another place of sanctuary? The year is 1948. The war is over. After 6 years of bloodshed and butchery by a psychopath and his evil, willing collaborators, during which an estimated 80 to 100 million people had died or been murdered. The Nuremberg trials had finished, and many, many hundreds of German Nazi war criminals had found justice on the end of a rope for crimes against humanity. Then, there were some who had decided that a cyanide pill was a much quicker way to escape the noose of retribution. Others, seeing that the end was near, had made their getaway before the Russians entered Berlin and tortured them, finding their way to South America, where many of them lived for a while, trying to evade the men from the Simon Wiesenthal organization, people dedicated to finding every last Nazi and bringing them to justice, headed by their leader, a man known as the Nazi Hunter, who was a Holocaust survivor. Even though many years have passed, the hunt still goes on, still finding those vile and depraved monsters, a subspecies of the human race. Although some are well into their dotage, justice is still being served. A particular case in point is the case of Adolf Eichmann, who, along with Heinrich Himmler, was the architect of the final solution, where 6 million Jews were sent to the death camps, only to be gassed, their bodies cremated, and the remains crushed. Eichmann was finally located in Argentina in 1961, thinking that after 16 years he was safe. But justice caught up with him, and he met the Grim Reaper on the end of a rope a year later. But returning to Henry Miller, a man who had changed his name from Henrik Mengele and who had managed to escape from his home in Germany to live in Spain, a neutral country, during the war, just after the conflict had begun. The surname he was born with, Mengele, was the same name as the man who was once revered by the Nazi Party for his inhumane and horrific experiments on unwilling participants. The infamous Dr. Joseph Mengele, a man given the name of the Angel of Death, a man, if indeed he could even be called that, who performed appalling and unspeakable experimentation on live inmates of the concentration camp at Auschwitz. Most of those subjects dying a lingering, painful, and agonizing death, all in the cause of making the so-called German master race into a nation of blue-eyed, blonde, Aryan supermen. But what had caused Henry to be reduced to his present situation? It was all due to that one barge letter that he had found on his desk just over a week before, which caused him a great deal of torment. He had read the words, his trembling hands trying to stop the shaking that was coursing through his body. The words that read, "You thought that we wouldn't find out, didn't you?" For many years, he had feared that maybe someone, somewhere, at some time, might find out about his namesake and make his life a living hell, maybe even murder him, with the idea that he was in some way engaged in the work carried out by that misguided and psychotic mass murderer, and had, somehow, missed out on receiving the same fate that had befallen the other members of the Nazi death squads. But he had been so careful, and had never told anyone of his former name, or his possible relationship to the Angel of Death at Auschwitz. So, how could someone have found out where he lived or worked? The only way out that he could think of was to go on the run, getting well away from anyone he had worked with and from where he had lived. He had no plan, just a crazed idea that he must stay out of sight in this empty building before he made his next move. All sorts of wild ideas coursing through his brain. Thoughts that he had never even dreamt about, up until now, came into his mind. It was a few weeks later in the office where Henry had formerly been employed, a place from which he had mysteriously disappeared some time previously, without explanation. One of the other employees who had worked with him had just read an article in the newspaper that had shocked him. It mentioned that his former workmate had been found dead in an abandoned building, having seemingly committed suicide by ingesting a cyanide pill. As tears welled up in his eyes, he murmured words that he found extremely difficult to say. "Henry, what happened? Why did you do it? Just as your friends here were organizing a surprise party for your birthday. You tried so hard to keep it a secret, and you thought that we wouldn't find out, didn't you?" The angst of Antilla. "Tell me the truth. Where are you from?" Yannick roared, leader of the Goobies, a notorious nomadic southern desert clan. In his teepee kneeled a young woman bound by the ankles and wrists. She wore a dirty white satin tunic and breeches, Her brunette hair escaped from under her sand-dusted headscarf. Around her tired eyes, a darkened mixture of sand and sweat stuck to her skin. Other than that, the rest of her face remained untouched. Inside the teepee stood a few wooden chests and a bed of dried rushes wrapped in linen. A lantern sat next to the bed, and about 4 woven ra covered the desert floor. A leather bag lay across the floor, next to the woman. Through the crack of the entrance, stars could be seen twinkling in the inky darkness of the desert sky, stretching out towards the far horizon. A slight chill wisped its way inside and curled around the room. Besides the faint talk of those in the surrounding tents, only the crackle of the rushes burning in the lantern could be heard. "I've said too much," the woman murmured. Yannick slapped her across the face. Her head snapped sideways, the red sting blooming across her cheek. Slowly, she turned back to face Yannick, trembling with rage. She glared at him, her blazing eyes drilling unsettlingly into his soul. Yannick took a step back. The wrinkles on his forehead loosened as frustration turned to shock. "No way. This can't be," he whispered, feeling his stomach drop. He lowered to one knee to face her. He had to confirm what he was seeing. He let out a sharp sigh of disbelief. His eyes weren't fooling him. "How?" he asked her. She continued to shoot daggers at him, remaining quiet. "How?" he repeated. "How what?" she spat. "Amber." Your eyes turned amber. She broke eye contact with Yannick and stared blankly at the reed-woven floor. Her eyes flickered back to a deep shade of brown. Yannick shuddered as he felt a sudden chill leave his bones. "Tell me I'm wrong when I say that you're from Antilla," Yannick said, holding his breath. The woman shut her eyes and sighed. "Tell me!" he roared impatiently. She looked up at him again, amber flickering faintly through her pupils. A coldness instantly rushed over him again. "You're not wrong. I am from Antilla." Yannick exhaled sharply, falling backwards to sit on the floor. He crossed his legs and ran one hand through his hair. "H, how is it possible? How did you survive?" he questioned in a softer tone. "Untie me, then I'll tell you," she hissed, her menacing amber gaze burning into Yannick. "You have some nerve. Then let my secrets remain untold," she jeered, narrowing her eyes. Her lip curled slightly. Yannick scoffed before getting up. He walked over to her leather bag and threw it angrily behind him, out of the woman's reach. He reached down, lifted the end of his robe, and took a sharp dagger from a tight piece of cloth wrapped around his ankle. He kneeled behind the woman and started to cut away at her restraints. She rolled her shoulders and stretched her neck the moment she was free. She stood up briefly, stretching her legs, and before sitting back down with her legs crossed. Yannick kept his eyes locked on her, dagger in hand, before he sat down again. "Thank you," she said, with a slight nod. "I will tell you how I managed to make it out alive from Antilla. But it will not help you, nor will it bring any peace to this situation. It will only quench your curiosity. A favor for a favor, Yanuk said, twisting his knife from the blade's tip. Very well. The woman dug deep into her mind to try to resurface the day she made it out of Antilla. The memories came flooding back in an instant. Tonight, a distant star will die. It will explode into blues and pinks and purples, Kira said, bursting with excitement. And how do you know this? I said, crossing my arms. Kira had a vivid imagination. We never knew if what she was saying was fact or something she had created in her head. Next to the North Star last night, I noticed one of the stars getting dimmer and dimmer until it disappeared. It was always there. I had it plotted on my star map. I waited for a long time, but it never came back. This lines up with the legend of Nara, Thomas interrupted. The legend that described Nara Envith witnessing the night sky, illuminating in an unfathomable display. The disappearance of a star followed by a cascade of colors, painting the night sky. Thomas leaned against one of the cobblestone walls of a side street in the market square of Antilla. The three teens were hidden in a corner of the square, watching the passers-by. The city was bustling with Antillian traders and foreign folk. Horses with small wooden carts clicked along the uneven cobblestone roads surrounding the square. The stalls were propped up in the center, interested customers weaving their way in and out of them. Bursts of vibrant colors decorated the city, from vivid Antillian woven silk to collections of earthy sienna spices from the south. A preacher suddenly emerged from the crowds and took a stand at the city's gathering point next to where we were chatting. He instantly drew the attention of the market-goers. His brown hair was scraggly, and his cheeks wore a crimson flush. His sweaty, cream tunic adhered to his skin and was half stuffed into the top of his black breeches. His chest heaved dramatically as he gasped for air. "We need to make peace with the brethren of Tuiga," he shouted, trying to regain his breath. "They will come, and they will not stop unless we equalize the trade in the north. The rulers of Antilla are setting us up to die. Open your eyes, people. The brethren are coming." The city guards swiftly appeared and hauled the man off the gathering point. A few of his passionate followers preached behind him, throwing their fists in the air in frustration as he was dragged away into the teeming crowds. Quickly, a bard stood up, seizing the unoccupied podium, curating songs of mockery about the preacher. He quickly gained a laughing audience. "Well, do you want to join me on my search tonight?" Kira toothily smiled, oblivious to the scenes around her. Thomas and I exchanged looks. We knew that meant camping on the roof of her steading till early hours of the morning. in the freezing cold. "It's a bit chilly, don't you think, Priscilla?" Thomas asked, raising his eyebrows. I agree. Besides, my parents would not appreciate it if I were to fall ill." I get it, Kira grumbled. "But just know that you are missing the chance to watch a legend be reborn. The legend of Kira." Thomas and I rolled our eyes. We spent some time browsing the market stalls for any interesting items we could buy with our measly 5 silver coins. To our avail, we found nothing. Once the vendors began disassembling their stalls, we headed home for dinner. The foreign merchants made their way to their respective inns, weary from the long day. The concealed stars slowly emerged into the darkened sky, and a cold air settled over the city. Merchants drank into the early hours, while children drifted to sleep. Wrapped in woolen blankets, I woke up to the frantic banging of Kira's mother on our front door in the dark of night. "Hurry! Hurry! Wake up!" she screamed. My dad rushed to the door. My mother's footsteps could be heard running to the kitchen. In the background, I could hear the petrified voice of Kira's mother explaining to my father, "The brethren are coming." Kira saw them crescenting the hills from the south. "We don't have much time. We need to leave before they get here. There are thousands of them." Without a moment's hesitation, my dad came storming into my room. "Dayu, what's happening?" I asked. He grabbed my arm and dragged me off my bed without a word. My mother was waiting at the door with a lantern. In the span of a few minutes, buildings had been set alight, and screams could be heard echoing through the city from the outer walls. We ran through the streets, trying to avoid soldiers and other screaming townsfolk, hoping to make it to the north of the city before the soldiers got there. But it was no use. We were surrounded. "Priscilla, you need to listen to me," my dad said sternly. He kneeled down to face me and placed his hands firmly on my shoulders. "Those carts by the city walls will soon be leaving. You need to climb under one and grab on. Do not let go. Do you hear me? Do not let go. You need to get out of here. We love you so much. We will come find you. Go. Be safe, my dear." Tears spilled down his cheeks, illuminating in the fire's blaze. "Dad, go!" I did what I was told. I ran to a horse and carriage next to one of the burning buildings by the city's outer wall. Before I went under, I looked back, hoping to see my parents to say my final goodbyes. But they had vanished. I climbed under the large carriage and held on to the wooden foundations. I wrapped the top of my feet behind another plank of wood. It only took a minute or so before a couple came running in a panic and climbed into the carriage. "Hurry!" the woman screamed as her partner leaped inside, closing the door behind him. A coachman jumped onto the front of the cart and instantly got the horse in a gallop. The cart moved quickly out of the city, cobblestone streets changing to rough dirt roads. We turned occasionally until we were headed for the south. As we moved further away, the stillness of the cold, airy night echoed the distant, muffled screams escaping from Antilla. Tears slipped down my cheeks, but a cry could not form. I didn't know if I would ever see my family or friends again. My whole world had changed in a heartbeat. My thoughts were suddenly interrupted by the jolt of the cart coming to a stop. I heard the neigh of a distant horse and footsteps approaching the carriage. There was a sudden gurgling as the swish of an arrow flew through the air. There was a splintering of wood, and a sudden force pushed the carriage backwards. The coachman's horse neighed, its nostrils flaring as it pulled against its reins, hooves scraping against the ground. The footsteps neared the cart until I could see the feet of what I could only guess was a soldier. The soldier walked to the carriage door and swung it open. Those inside screamed in fear before the man silenced their petrified cries with a pierce of a sword. The blood in their throats gurgled and spluttered for a few seconds, their bodies jerking and flailing in the carriage before they fell still. My lungs screamed for air. My heart was racing in my chest. The soldier dragged the bodies out of the cart and threw them on the ground with a thump. Their heads bounced off the soil. Two sets of lifeless eyes stared blankly at me from the dirt floor. The woman's gown and the man's tunic were drenched in blood, and they had huge gaping wounds for necks. I felt my palms get sweaty and my grip loosening. "Don't let go, Priscilla. Don't let go," I told myself. I felt a sudden heat and heard a crackle of wood. The carriage had been set alight. I turned my head frantically, trying to find the feet of the murderer. Instead, 4 hooves galloped alongside the carriage and headed in the direction of Antilla. I wanted to wait until I couldn't hear the thunder of hooves anymore before letting go. Instead, the fumes of burning wood engulfed my lungs, and the hiss of flames dancing in the wind deafened the soldier's departure. The fire closed under the carriage. The sweat on my hands was as slippery as oil. My body burned, sweat grabbing onto my hair and the fabric of my clothes. The roaring flames licked off my exposed skin as they surrounded me. It was then I let go. I scurried out from under the carriage, staying low. I looked cautiously around, but saw nothing. I carefully moved away from the cart, pulling myself along the ground with my forearms and pushing myself with my feet. My heart pounded in my chest. I had to keep going. I had to be brave. A forest lay ahead. Through the mud and reeds, I finally made it to where the grass met the tree line. I got up on one knee, attempting to stay low, wiping the sweat from my forehead on my ashy linen shirt. I tried to regain my breath. I looked back at Antilla, the burning carriage collapsing in the corner of my eye. The city was being swallowed by the fire. I could make out hundreds upon thousands of more soldiers marching their way to the stone walls of my city. Their huge war band stretched into the distance, further than the eye could see. A harrowing pain of grief shot through me, each quivering breath a battle against the burning agony in my chest. Before I could process anything, the sound of soldiers on horses re-emerged from my left. Without thinking, I ran. I ran into the forest, never looking back. I had lost everything that day. There has ever been a more notorious massacre than the massacre of Antilla. There were no survivors, except for me. Yanuk shook his head in disbelief. "Are you ready?" he asked. "For what?" Yanuk stood up and outstretched his hand to regain the north. Priscilla blinked at him in bewilderment. They did not only steal Antilla. The Brethren banished us nomads from our territories, leaving us stateless in the south. They are trying to rule over all the sacred lands. We shall not let that happen. We are going to fight. We will take back what is rightfully ours. Are you in? Priscilla hesitated for a moment. The bottled anger boiled her blood. A fiery passion burst in the pit of her stomach, longing to gain revenge for her friends, her family, her home. She looked up at Yanuk, eyes burning with an igniting amber. Priscilla nodded and took Yanuk's hand. She was ready to fight. Runaway bride. Hopping onto a random train in the middle of the night was not the best idea Elise ever had. Not her worst, but a close second to when she was 13 and slept in the library overnight, only to wake up surrounded by cleaning pixies, surrounded by luggage and the smell of old clothes. She shifts her legs to avoid having them fall asleep before the train reaches the next stop. In other carts, there are no doubt people dining and laughing with glasses of champagne in their hands. She wishes she could join them in their revelry, but leaving her hiding space in a torn, dirt-stained wedding dress won't bring her the right sort of attention. Elise only wanted to be sure that no one had altered it without her knowledge, like her mother-in-law-to-be threatened to do when she failed to convince her to wear her gaudy dress from her own wedding. She didn't expect to hear screaming from the adjacent room when she tested how it fit. Glass bottles filled with wine for the guests breaking against the adjoining walls, the cries only stopping at the sound of a sickening thud. Her groom's voice only relieved her for a moment before she heard it discuss where to dispose of the body. She acted on instinct, opening a window and running until she found the train ready to depart. Tears come unbidden after what feels like centuries, thinking of only escape and surviving. Her plans of marrying the man of her dreams are now as broken as her heart. Her eyes grow heavy after her sorrow drains her of tears that further stained her once beautiful white gown. Not even the pain in her blooded feet could keep her awake as adrenaline faded from her body, replaced with exhaustion. Time passes her by as she slept, leaving her ignorant to the moment when the train stops and she's no longer alone. Someone large and strong grabs her, pulling her forward to the point where she nearly falls. Despite her panicked cries, Elise is dragged across the floor, her body already sore from her escape, her limbs unable to move from the mixture of fear and defeat. This is it, my end. They'll take me back to the estate, if not the chapel. My murderous groom will say I'm just a frightened bride with cold feet. And then it will be my body buried somewhere unknown. No one will know I'm missing until I'm nothing but bones. They take her into a train cart filled with people in fancy clothes, tossing her into an empty booth, her head falling against the window, exposing the darkness she used to cover her escape. She doesn't recognize the area behind the glass. Nothing but trees with no sign of human influence. Despite the throbbing in her skull, Elise turns her head to the gawking crowd staring back at her in confusion and horror, their meal interrupted by her unexpected entrance. Only a lone man in a trench coat and wide-brimmed hat has a neutral expression when looking at her. "Is this everyone?" the man asks a uniformed man, the one she assumes brought her here. "Yes, sir. All the passengers are accounted for, and our stowaway." "Any sign of the necklace?" "No, sir." The man in the trench coat sighs in frustration. Elise shrinks into herself as the eyes surrounding her seem to search through her soul. "Who is she?" one whispers. "I don't know. I don't recognize her." "Wait, isn't there a wedding this morning? The Von Gray and Carlyle families, right? It can't be Elise Carlyle. She wouldn't be caught dead in such a state. Besides, why would she be running from her own wedding? They've known each other for years." Elise opens her mouth to explain everything, yet no words would come. Try as she might, the only sound she can make is a strangled cry. The man in the trench coat walks down the small path separating the row of booths, hands behind his back in thought. Everyone else remains where they are, their panicked whispers filling the small space with dread. "Detective, what are your plans?" someone asks. "I already have the train staff searching for the missing jewelry. The conductor is aware of this, and I've informed him to keep the train here until the necklace is found. If the thief wishes to reach Bridgeway, they will have to confess. Otherwise, we'll wait until the local police arrive to interrogate everyone." The chatter rises to frustrated protests. The person who dismissed her identity, a middle-aged woman with a large hat decorated with silk flowers, rose from her seat. "This is preposterous. I have somewhere to be, and being fashionably late isn't an option. If I'm not in the pews at the chapel with the other guests, when the bride walks down the aisle, the shame will ruin my reputation. and standing in society. The detective ignores her outburst to write down something in his notepad. The older woman, realizing her declaration failed to sway the detective, reaches for her purse, opening it and searching until she pulls out a hand mirror. Its metal frame shaped into soft vines with glowing stones for flowers. Elise recognizes her seeing mirror as the work of a famous artisan in Bridgeway, the place where the chapel awaited her, and what she once thought would be the start of her new life. The older woman leaves her seat, not making any effort to hide what she's doing from the detective or the other passengers. If he suspects something, he doesn't show it as he eyes the passengers. The older woman finds a small corner with an empty booth, turning her back to the others as she presses the flowers and whispers a few words to connect with another seeing mirror. Elise can only see a flash of light from the mirror before the detective takes position across from her, blocking her view. Care to answer some questions? Elise tries once more to speak. And again, only a sound of pain escapes her lips. The detective's hardened expression shifts slightly as she pretends to write with an invisible pen on the table. Here, you can use mine. Now, first question, how did you get on the train? Elise writes down a few words. Open door. Got on before the train left. And why did you get on the train? Running away. Heard a murder. Groom and groomsmen. Don't know who was killed, but was scared. Your future husband and his groomsmen killed someone? What else can you tell me? Screaming, fighting, glass shattering, silence. Then groom says they need to hide the body. The detective continues to ask her questions, Elise responding with what few words she could conjure from her mind without fear settling in. When the interrogation is over, Elise feels hollow, yet despondent. The detective thanks her for her cooperation, moving on to a passenger in a heavy wool coat. Yet, before he could ask a single question, two things happen at the same time. A uniformed woman enters the train with a necklace of flawless diamonds in hand, and the older woman throws her mirror against the wall. The detective springs into action, reaching the staff member in seconds. The older woman turns her attention to Elise, her expression changing from rage to concern. She approaches Elise while the others are distracted with the reveal of the missing necklace. You're Elise, aren't you? Elise nods, hope rising in her chest. Oh, I should have known. The older woman returns to her snobbish attitude in an instant. Of course, when I connected to my cousin's mirror, she was certain nothing was the matter, or she would have told me. With this theft of your wedding gift, I worried I would be late, so naturally, I had to give the bride a proper blessing to alleviate the results of my tardiness. And when the mirror was given to the bride, you won't believe who I saw. Did the Von Gray family servants think so little of me that I wouldn't recognize one of them from the times I've spent with their mistress? The dress wasn't even embroidered. She pats Elise's head, as if she were a child, while it swirls in confusion at the news. Poor thing, forced to play in a foolish man's game. No doubt he believed the veil would hide her identity until the priest declared them husband and wife. No matter, everything will be revealed soon enough. I told my cousin to inform your mother that your groom has a convoluted plan to wed another woman of a lowly station. Once we reach Bridgeway, all will be well. Elise is not certain the older woman's assumptions are correct, but the thought of salvation is enough to set her mind at ease. Once the train resumes its journey, the passengers return to a modicum of normalcy, talking about mundane things as they ate their now cold food. Elise's own appetite returned as she dined with the older woman, as she spoke of the scandal that will erupt once the truth is revealed. With time, the wheels break upon the rails as the station of Bridgeway comes into view. The familiar face of her mother, eyes stained with sorrow, light up once Elise races onto the platform into her warm embrace. I spy with my little eye. It's funny, the things one thinks about when staring dramatically out the window. Even funnier, the things we do. I stopped racing raindrops a few miles back when I kept winning. My mother was right. Winning at everything gets unbelievably boring. Who knew a car window would teach me that lesson? Trailing my eyes lazily over the book on my lap, I deliberate. I could read, but that would mean turning on the overhead light, and I don't want what's out there to see me any better than it already does. Besides, reading in the back seat makes me nauseous. Sighing, I look out the window again. Dark skies press down on the trees, lining either side of the road, their jagged silhouettes barely visible beneath the moonlight. But I don't need to see them to know it is there. I can feel it, like the fabric of my clothes against my skin, like the weight of my own breath in my lungs. It's waiting, watching. It won't be able to follow us past the state line, not when it's tied by its grave deep in the very forest it now lurks in. If we can just keep moving, if we don't stop, my fingers tighten around the seatbelt, because in the trunk, wrapped in tarps, are knives. The blood on them should be drying, crusting over. But that doesn't matter. It won't be the knives that get us caught. It'll be it. The road stretches endlessly, twin lines of paint vanishing into the dark. The wipers squeak against the windshield, streaking rainwater instead of clearing it. The radio hums static beneath the commercials, like an unspoken warning. To whom, though? You see it? Bex asks beside me. Out of the four of us, she's freaking out the worst. I've long since put a barrier between our seats to avoid the worst of her rocking and jittery libs. I give her another flat look, hoping this one will shut her up for the rest of our trip. If I did, Don't you think I would have said something by now? She whimpers and turns back to her own window, staring wide-eyed at the trees. I meet Rick's eyes in the rearview mirror, and Theo side-eyes me from the passenger's seat. None of us say a word. In truth, I can see it. The shifting shadow that vaults across the street every few feet before melting into the trees. It got so out of hand. It was never. No, we did mean to do it. We just didn't think it'd come back to bite us like it did. Is doing. What's also true is that Bex will not be making it past the state limits with us. She can't be trusted. The minute everything was done and buried, she broke. Broken things aren't always fixable, and she is one loose end we cannot risk letting go, or it would end. We were all screwed. Rick blinks twice. I inhale deeply, sighing quietly through my nose. This is part of the plan. It won't chase us past the state limits, because it can't. But it also will have no incentive to do so. It's why we let Bex do it in the first place. Theo hums and raises the volume on the radio. Commercials, figures. Rick blinks one more time. The locks click, lightning flashes, bleaching Bex's side of the car in stark white. She yelps, flinching away from the window. I take my chance, sliding closer and pulling her into an embrace. It'll be okay, I whisper into her hair. Bex clutches at me, desperate. I let her. Everyone deserves comfort in the end. I swallow down my goodbyes. Theo coughs. I kick at his seat. Shut it, my hit says. The timing needs to be right. A shift in the trees. Closer now. The weight of something pressing against the night. Watching. Expectant. Do you hear that? Bex whispers, voice barely there. Like scraping. I don't answer. Because she doesn't hear scraping. She hears breathing. Shh. Nothing's there. You are just hearing things. I finally say, petting her hair. She doesn't feel me slide her seatbelt off or reach for the door handle. The door pops open. Mila, she whispers. Wait. Her fingers dig into my collar. She feels it now. The open air behind her. Too late. I pry her hands off me, using the impulse to send her flying out of the car. Sorry. I squeeze her one last time to make the hard push I give her. Bex screams. Her arms flail, desperate. For the door, for me, for anything. Her fingers catch on the seatbelt. All in vain. She tumbles, hitting the pavement in a mess of limbs. I should look away, but I don't. It roars. I turn just in time to see it pounce on the prone body on the road through the rear window. Rick finally breathes a sigh of relief, and seeing him do so uncoils the tight knot of tension between my shoulders. Theo closes his eyes and smiles, whistling along with the song playing. The car feels bigger now, quieter. I roll my shoulders, adjusting to the absence. something lingers in the air, something final, or perhaps something new. 4 down to 3, a new dynamic. Interesting. It's a shame, but change is necessary sometimes, and there is no better time than right now. Isn't that the saying? I unbuckle my seat belt and close the car door. Smooth, careful. I lean between the front seats, smirking at Theo. He rolls his eyes, shaking his head fondly. I kiss Rick on the cheek, breathing in his cologne. He reaches up to stroke my cheek, takes his eyes off the road, long enough to kiss the corner of my mouth. Not a word, he murmurs, to our grave. I grin. It roars behind us. Bex doesn't. We cross the state limits. I sit back. The rain races down my window enthusiastically. Would you look at that? I win again. Just 2 more hours to get home. Cliffhanger by Lee Kendrick. I had never been to a tropical country before, but Indonesia was my friend's, and I chose a holiday destination after we had scanned the internet for tropical countries. We all agreed to go to the Indonesian island of Sumba, an island as large as Jamaica. Apparently, Indonesia boasts the most islands of any country. Unbelievably, over 17,000. My friends Michael, Bob, and I, Dave, had booked a holiday here for 2 weeks. We planned to do some snorkeling, exploring the coral reefs, and go on some boat trips to some of the Indonesian islands. For now, we were just chilling out on a sun lounger, drinking cold beers on the white sands of the Mbawana beach. The Sumba Island landscape is so rich in exotic plants and animal life. It also boasts unusual rock formations, including the Halfling Giant Stone. This is a coastal rock with a large gaping hole through it. In fact, me and the boys are just 30 feet away from it, to our left. Another unusual thing about Indonesia is the Indian Ocean. It changes color, varying from turquoise to ultramarine blue to a remarkable golden orange. Another thing this part of the world is known for is its earthquakes and tsunamis. Just a few minutes ago, we felt a heavy earthquake, but this was normal for Indonesia. We were glad we weren't in a city full of buildings. The tremor only lasted for about 20 seconds, and then it just fizzled out. Nothing to worry about. Feeling hot, I decided to go for a dip in the ocean. As I slowly walked in the soft, powdery white sand towards the ocean, I sensed a foreboding. And for some reason, I noticed it was taking me longer than usual at this time of day to arrive by the ocean. I also observed pools of seawater with seaweed, crabs, and other sea creatures, which weren't there before. And I'm sure by now I would have been hearing the waves come crashing onto the beach. But the ocean seems much further away. Then it dawned on me as I stared out into the distance. There it was, a few miles away. a massive wall of water. Difficult to measure, but I would say it must be at least 50 feet high, and it was heading towards the beach. It was a tsunami. I had heard in documentaries about how the ocean suddenly withdraws from a beach, heralding a tsunami. Is this my time to die? I thought. I turned and ran as fast as I could, back towards my friends, wearing my stupid flip-flops. As I ran, I observed dozens of people lying on their beach towels, oblivious to what was about to happen. I attempted to shout to warn them, but no words would come from my mouth. I was unable to speak because I was in the grip of fear. I managed to attract a couple's attention, but they just waved back at me and continued sunbathing. I picked up a heavy shell and threw it at them, and then pointed frantically towards the wall of death. I ran and ran, painfully slowly, getting closer towards my friends. Then my friends Michael and Bob saw me. I waved with both hands, frantically in desperation, to try and warn them as I pointed back to the ocean. They just seemed to ignore me. Finally, I reached Michael and Bob to pull them away. My larynx was constricted, paralyzed. I couldn't utter one word as I pointed back towards the ocean. A bloody, gigantic blue-green wave was only a couple of 100 yards away. By now, there were people screaming everywhere on the beach. We all started running. But where? Where do we go? Do you climb a tree? The waves are too high. Do we try to outrun it? No. It's too close behind us, and it must be moving at over 100 mph per now. Do we go left or right? Maybe the wave isn't as long as the beach. Very unlikely we could escape. It probably stretches as far as the length of the beach. We kept on running in front for our lives. As the adrenaline coursed through our veins, I spotted the cliff some 50 yards away. The tsunami was now so close behind us, you could hear its thunderous roar, like a wild beast after its prey. As we managed to reach the cliff, we climbed as rapidly as we could, managing some 30 feet, when the wave crashed heavily into the cliff. It demolished the halfling giant stone and engulfed the surrounding area. The beach had been swallowed up, and the ocean continued to climb, moving closer towards us. This wild beast wasn't done until it caught up with us, all three of us, now exhausted, and like a gazelle, tired out with all its energy, spent. It was ready to drop and resign its fate to the beast chasing after it. I knew it was just only seconds away before the wave would claim me and my two friends. Suddenly, my heart stopped beating. To my horror, I was unable to lift my leg up to a ledge. It had got entangled in some plant's tendrils. Bob and Michael were too busy escaping to not notice me in trouble. The water was now up to my ankles as I frantically moved my foot to budge it free. The boat just wouldn't move. By now, I resigned to the fact that I was going to drown. As a 26-year-old, I was hoping for longer on this earth, and I just wish Bob and Michael escaped the wave. The water was now rising up to my neck. I closed my eyes and saw flash images of my mother, dad, sister, and brother. But wait a moment. Why hasn't the water covered me yet? I thought. The next thing I noticed was the water level was going down. It was now down to my feet, and I was able now to budge my foot free. The water was drawing slowly away, down to where the ocean and beach would normally meet. I looked up to the top of the cliff, and there, looking down, were my two buddies, Michael and Bob, waving to me, laughing. We all had a miracle escape. Sadly, many tourists didn't, and so today's story has come to an end. Or perhaps it never really ended. There are mysteries still there, questions still unanswered, and sometimes things that seem to only exist in stories can creep into reality in unexpected ways. Are you sure that when you turn off the sound, everything around you will still be normal as before? Or is there something watching you? Either way, always remember that these are just stories, or at least we want to believe that they are. If you like moments of suspense, tension, and breathlessness, don't forget to follow me so you don't miss the next stories. And next time, when you come back, make sure you are ready, because what awaits you may be even scarier than you thought. See you again if you still have the courage to continue listening.